For me, it's an opportunity to imagine and engineer the seascape ahead. So let me start by taking a perspective of what strategists and economists describe today as our environment. The world as we know it has entered into the era of the fourth industrial revolution, an era that ushers social, political, cultural, and economic disruption, which will increasingly expand and unfold as the 21st century progresses. Building on the widespread availability of digital technologies that were a result of the third industrial or digital revolution, the fourth industrial revolution will be driven largely by the convergence of digital, biological, and physical innovations. The fourth industrial revolution's breakthroughs, such as artificial intelligence, genome editing, augmented reality, robotics, and 3D printing, to name a few of the new technologies, are rapidly changing the way we will create, exchange, and distribute value. One can only begin to imagine how profoundly these developments will transform institutions and industries and will drive systemic change across all sectors of society. So our ability to adapt to fast-rising technologies opens up new frontiers and limitless possibilities for the advancement in our way of life. As the old physical world we know or we knew evaporates and merges into digital, rules of the game, trading patterns, military power, manufacturing processes, transport networks, communication patterns, and even how we relate to each other, one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many, all that will change. All these are intended, in a word, to make a brave, new, and better world. However, as history has shown, each industrial revolution brought the good and the not so good to people and nation states. With each cycle, immense wealth and power were created, and more so in the last 2 decades, and with terrifying speed. The jury, however, is still out as to whether such disruptions have actually helped reduce poverty or have just exacerbated income disparities. In today's environment, what we see is the potential for societal upheaval at a global scale, and that is heightened by social media bigotry and bullying, cybersecurity threats, misinformation of a massive scale, and even potential unemployment. So how should we, therefore, formulate our plans and strategies in the period ahead that can spell the difference between our being victims of disruption or alternatively our being stewards, responsible stewards, who can shape and transform our seascapes and landscapes, creating meaning, purpose, and structure for what we want, which is a better tomorrow? We have a unique opportunity to proactively shape the outcomes of the fourth industrial revolution for our country. And given what we have begun to see globally, drive the deliberate retention of common human values amidst technological innovations and progress. This is what MIT calls mens et manus, mind and hand working together to make a better world. Klaus Schwab describes this as a revolution which is about much more than technology. It is an opportunity to unite global communities, to build sustainable economies, adapt and modernize governance models, reduce material and social inequalities, and to commit to values-based leadership on emerging technologies. In the face of such disruptive technologies or breakthroughs, my introduction this morning is in effect a call to action. How do we imagineer a vision for developing collaborative and sustainable solutions for our industry, and more importantly, for our country? Against this backdrop, you might then ask, okay, so what does all of this have to do with seafaring and seafaring's future? Today, with an ever-increasing impact, is a world that is more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, where the rate of change is changing faster than our ability to manage it. Just as we were able to derive the answers to the most pressing concerns, the questions have changed. The problems are magnified, and the challenges even more perplexing. We face a future that will be driven by this acronym, SMACIT, short for social media, mobile communications, analytics, cloud computing, and the Internet of Things. These elements alone, at their most fundamental levels, will change and disrupt our habits, thinking processes, and move us out of our comfort zones. For a country like the Philippines, what does this mean? For one, we have to accept the fact that dealing with a rapid development environment is the new normal. And this presupposes that all of us in this room today, can commit to be on that train that will proactively drive change to enable and secure the future of our people. And the only way to sustain such a drive is to ensure that the approach to Philippine education in particular, at the earliest levels, factors a real appreciation for STEAM education. STEAM meaning science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. Note that the term the arts has now been included in what used to be referred to as STEM education. Art is seen as incorporating the cultivation of creativity, ingenuity, and problem solving, developing both analytical and creative thinking. STEAM education aims to enable students to reach their full potential and to ensure that the more technology takes a hold of our lives, the more human insight and perspective is actually needed to help nurture such transformations. So relative to our industry, over the last few years, we have asked ourselves, how do we attract the best and brightest of the next generations to carry out what most of you have been doing over the last 40 to 50 years? This cloud of doubt has and continues to hang over most current stakeholders. A starting point might be, let's understand those future generations, millennials and the Gen Z. What are their interests? Connecting their aspirations and mindset with our industry needs in order for us to excel, that's one of the things that we have to be able to get a grip on. I've often wondered why in the Philippines we have focused only in promoting careers at sea. With shipping being responsible for over 90% of world trade, and with 1 out of every 4 Filipinos being a maritime professional, our country does play a significant role in the global maritime seascape. And so perhaps we should consider that expanding our efforts in attracting the best and brightest shouldn't only be for the seafaring profession, but more importantly, to attract people into the maritime industry as a whole. In the years ahead, the transition from ship to shore will be as important as it was in the first transition of Filipinos on board and into the present positions of leadership. This time around, however, there is the added challenge of growing automation, and therefore the need for greater and different competencies from the neck up. As change continues to evolve, particularly in transforming work functions, there will be a transition period, particularly for those on board. Meanwhile, those in the pipeline, the next generations, will need to have a real understanding of SMACIT and STEAM in order to have the flexibility to compete effectively over time. The value of this inaugural SAFETY4SEA conference in Manila can best be appreciated in the program that has been set for us, covering talent acquisition, shaping and challenging the needed skill sets, staying healthy, and taking into consideration next-gen perspectives. Against these points, let me share with you trending topics that our industry is dealing with. First, let's talk about safety. Safety considerations in attitude and mindset across all industry stakeholders, driven by a common theme, together in safety, while unleashing the power of collaboration in getting things done. A second issue, decarbonization, the need for each of us to take the lead in our own ways, driven by the growing societal demands that we face for achieving zero emissions sooner rather than later. Just last week, you may have read that over 11,000 scientists from around the world signed a manifesto seeking urgent and concerted global action on climate issues. Third point, talent acquisition. understanding and defining the workforce of the future, managing through diversity, flexibility, and automation in order to attract the best and brightest. Fourth item, eliminating waste. Driving productivity by merging the physical and the digital, which in reality is actually at the heart of the fourth industrial revolution. So these topics can certainly be applied across all facets of maritime. The main question though, and let's ask ourselves this, are we in the Philippines ready for this future? Are we as individuals, companies and institutions, both private and public, ready for change and ready to change? That challenge remains. Either we disrupt today what we do and how we think, or else we have to be prepared to be disrupted. Unless we as a country, as a people, and as leaders of our respective communities, industries, and companies adopt a total change of mindset and manage this from the front, we will not have the inertia and the momentum to keep us in step with the rest of the world. That train has left the station, and we need to be on that train to maintain the Philippine status as a seafaring capital and the Filipino as a seafarer of choice. SAFETY4SEA prides itself in a mission to promote safer, smarter, and greener shipping. For this to come through and drive forward within the Philippine maritime industry and for the various publics we serve, we have to ensure a mindset change. We have to drive a new view towards people, process, and technology. Understanding the global shipping industry, its nuances, and its reach, that is a must. We have to understand the industry that we work in. Recognizing that what got us to where we are today will not get us where we need to be in the future, that is another must. Unless we adapt and disrupt, address the evolving issues, anticipate the future, we will be lost in terms of how that game will play out in the years ahead. Interestingly enough, throughout history, we've actually evolved and used the seas and oceans to drive development, global trade, and humanity. It's no different than our company's vision. We want to move the world in more ways than one. Let me read to you a passage which I paraphrased, and let me ask you to think about what that passage means. Shipping is a noble activity, useful beyond all other undertakings to mankind. It exports what is in excess. It provides what is lacking. It makes the impossible possible. It joins together men from different lands and makes every inhospitable island part of the mainland. It brings fresh knowledge to those who sail. It refines behavior. It brings friendship and development to all. It consolidates life by bringing together all that is most human in people. Think about that passage. Reflect on what that means, and you would probably say, well, that actually reflects the industry as we know it today. In fact, that phrase dates back to the 13th century, and it's attributable to one George Pachymeres, a Byzantine philosopher and teacher, and a leading historian and scholar of the time. So you see, even as far as back then, he recognized the essence of this industry, an industry that we are celebrating today. The challenging trends we face today, which I shared with you, are in many ways no different from the challenges that our forefathers faced. They were equally disruptive of life at that period of time. But our forefathers overcame. That's why we are here today. And that means so can we, in spite of the challenges that we face. The Darwinian theory of survival of the fittest aptly describes humanity's ability to figure things out in order to survive. That's the resiliency factor in all of us. So, let me come full circle. We need to seize the opportunity to continue to drive our country, capitalize on our ability to operate responsibly, collaborate effectively, focus on the future, and lead from the front. In short, the call to action which I suggest, enabled by today's SAFETY4SEA Manila Forum, is to renovate, evolve, and transcend our mindsets. The mindset needed to effectively compete in the fourth industrial revolution. It's a mindset that will define the future of seafaring in the Philippines, and it will ensure that the Filipino global maritime professional will sail on every vessel in every sea to move the world. Thank you very much.